Regrettably, he is no friend of the United Kingdom. He's no leader of the free world. So will the Prime Minister advise the King to call off his state visits to Washington before it's too late? Because I really fear for what Trump might say or do while our King is forced to stand by his side. We cannot put His Majesty in that position.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. In the 250 years since our founders declared independence and held certain truths to be self-evident, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, America's bond with its forebear has waxed and waned and waxed, from adversaries during the Revolution and then another war in 1812 to steadfast, ironclad allies through the bloodiest, most deadly era in human history. But at no point in any of those 250 years has the so-called special relationship resembled anything like what we're observing today. A short time ago, we watched as Donald Trump welcomed King Charles to the White House at the outset of a rare 4-day visit, one that's expected to include, among other events, a state dinner and what will be the first address to Congress by a British monarch in 35 years, despite the fact that some lawmakers in the UK, like Ed Davey, who you just heard from in that clip we started with, had advocated for the King to cancel this trip to visit Donald Trump altogether. Underneath all the pomp and garden parties this weekend will be the reality that this is not a honeymoon. It's closer to what the Wall Street Journal describes as a, quote, diplomatic Hail Mary by the British government at a fraught time for our alliance and for the rest of the world. From that Wall Street Journal report, quote, much is at stake. The special relationship between the U.S. and its mother country is at a generational low, thanks to growing frictions over everything from trade to the war in Ukraine to Trump's threats to seize Greenland. The U.S. attack on Iran has also caused energy prices to jump, damaging the British economy and exasperating the British government, which thinks the war is illegal and unwise. Trump, meanwhile, regularly harangues British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on social media for not supporting his military endeavors in the Middle East and for the UK government's penchant for wind-powered energy, which he hates. And then there's the matter of Jeffrey Epstein, likewise hanging over politics in the UK. And here, remember, the King's own brother, the now former Prince Andrew, was arrested 2 months ago on suspicion of, quote, misconduct in public office related to Jeffrey Epstein. The former prince remains under investigation but has not been charged with a crime. And there's more. Peter Mandelson was the UK ambassador to the United States until he was fired for his ties to, you guessed it, Jeffrey Epstein. So now Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a frequent target of Donald Trump's ire, is the subject of calls to resign and a potential inquiry over his decision to appoint Mandelson, despite those ties to Epstein. So here we are, a quarter millennium after the U.S. first told King George to, get lost, pound sand. His great-great-great-great-great-grandson, 5 greats, is here to mend a fraying alliance and to treat a president who seems to aspire to being a king himself. That's where we start the hour with New York Times diplomatic correspondent Michael Crowley, who's back with us. Also back with us, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He served as the commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe. Joining us as well, NYU law professor, legal analyst Melissa Murray is here. And with me at the table, Princeton University professor and political analyst Eddie Glaude is here. Michael Crowley, take me through the sort of, I want to say, opportunities and challenges for each side as this visit begins.
Yeah, hi, Nicole, and thank you. Well, plenty of both. I think for President Trump, I see mostly opportunity. He doesn't, I think, see these visits or interactions really as being challenging. He tends to have a way to dominate them, for better or worse, for all involved. I think the opportunity for him is that he recognizes that the British royals still have this enormous ability to charm the American public. Americans love the royals. They love everything about the British monarchy. It's kind of an irony, because this is a country, obviously, that was founded in a revolution against the king, but now we treat the monarchs in Great Britain as these stars, and we want to know everything about them. And I think President Trump likes to associate with that. He seems to admire this family personally. He seems to actually get along well with Charles, but he also, I think, likes to associate himself with this, aura of sort of celebrity and class that they represent. That's always been a big thing for Trump. He's very aware of his status, and I think we've seen signs through his many visits with the royals over the years. He loves the idea that they are accepting him and treating him well, even though there, I think, has been quite a lot of skepticism about whether all of that treatment has been sincere. Now, for Charles, of course, I think I see more of a balance of opportunities and challenges. The opportunities are to try to improve the relationship between Washington and London. Trump has been very critical, as you made clear in your setup here, of Keir Starmer and the British government, particularly over the war in Iran. There's an issue of great concern that may be arcane to some Americans, but there have been some leaked threats that Trump might stop recognizing British sovereignty over the Falkland Islands off the coast of Argentina, which is an issue which is really distressing to people in Great Britain and has been the subject of headlines over there. So they'll want to smooth that over, but that's of a piece with this larger tension between the U.S. and Britain over Iran, over NATO, over Russia. And, the UK, it's still a special relationship, but it's a troubled one. So the opportunity for Charles is to try to essentially make Trump feel happy and flattered, and maybe try to slip some policy thoughts into his ear to get things right with Keir Starmer. And I'll just conclude with the challenges, which are obvious, Nicole, as you and all your viewers have seen. Anytime a foreign leader is in Trump's presence, you don't know what he's going to say or where the conversation is going to go. And I'm sure that Charles is very anxious about their photo opportunity. My understanding is that there's not a plan for a lot of press questions, but the cameras will come in when the men are next to each other, and that has the potential to go a little bit haywire, not to mention anything that Trump might put on Truth Social over the course of this visit that would force the Crown to have to decide whether or not to respond to. So lots to look forward to here.
I mean, color me cynical, but isn't it embarrassing as Americans that the Brits sent in a king to, quote, as you said, Michael Crowley, make Trump feel happy and flattered? It sounds like a op.
Well, Nicole, this is diplomacy in the Trump era in many ways. We've talked about it here before, but this is a president who has, let's say, a very personal style of diplomacy and extremely personal sensitivities to how he is viewed, whether he feels respected or disrespected. Vladimir Zelensky learned that the hard way in the Oval Office February of last year. And I think that treating him well and treating him like an equal or even as a superior has worked for many foreign leaders who really aren't mainly interested in their actual relationship with him or reflecting how they feel about him, but trying to position themselves diplomatically so that Trump will treat their countries favorably on policy matters of enormous consequence, which he often seems to decide based on his personal predilections.
Let me ask you, other than Putin, who has that worked for?
Oh, gosh, you're putting me on the spot, but I would say the Brits, for starters. I think that Charles has done a good job of maintaining the relationship. Now you would say, okay, but look at the fighting with Keir Starmer. So touche on that. I think Macron in France has been able to blunt some of the actions that Trump might take toward his country, particularly economically. As you know, he threw a huge military parade for him, and if you gave me a few minutes, I think I could come up with others, but you're right. It doesn't always work. And there have been cases where I think people have, go ahead.
Obviously, it doesn't work for long. I want to bring the general in because I just am so wary of, the reporting is accurate, but we should never describe it as normal. It is not normal for a nation to have to send in their king to, and I love the way Michael Crowley put it, quote, make feel happy and flatter an American president. It seems to reveal that we don't have a grown-up if we have to send in a king and all of his kingly pomp and circumstance, General.
Yeah, the last time, Nicole, a monarch visited the United States, it was during the Suez Crisis, when Queen Elizabeth and President Eisenhower came together because they were at odds. As watching this visit, it hasn't been given a whole lot of media attention until just now when Charles appeared at the White House. But I was thinking at it from a perspective of the things I used to do when I engaged with other countries in Europe, and I had to travel to the 49 different countries. My staff would always prepare a book for me saying, here are the things we need to accomplish, and here are the minefields that you need to avoid when you're dealing with Serbia or Norway or whatever. And looking at the list of the minefields that Prince Charles has to avoid, his prime minister has been called a coward. His Navy has been insulted. The U.S. has said they're not going to support the British claim to the Falkland Islands. NATO participation at his odds. Andrew has been involved in the Epstein affair. Harry is in the U.S. Prince Harry is in the U.S. The Oval Office session, Charles has probably seen other leaders of countries go into that session and how it has turned into an interesting dynamic, to put it mildly. And then you have the war in Iran. All of those things are minefields that Charles has to avoid. And there's even some smaller ones. The state dinner is going to be held in the normal place where the state dinner is held. So I'm sure the toasts are going to be about how the big, beautiful ballroom is going to be better. So it puts the king in a very uncomfortable political position as the monarch of a country. The king is coming here really to pay tribute to the United States 250th anniversary and to talk about science and innovation and the economy and climate change and show a refined image. All of those things are directly the opposite of the kinds of things President Trump portrays when he's dealing with foreign leaders.